Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bump Draft and Pray podcast. I'm your host, Pedro Barbosa, and with me I have my good friend, Earl Goddard. Good evening, Earl.
Hello, mate. How are you?
A clue.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
So, yeah, this is the British GP review, but before that, we have some big news to bring you all. It's old news from 2 days ago. Everyone knows that by now, but we have to talk about it anyway, which is that Mr. Daniel Ricciardo, the man that I said in the last podcast that he would not drive in any more F1 races, is back. So I'm
good.
What are your thoughts about that?
I'm not surprised about them binning off De Vries. It's not the best car on the grid, but Yuki, who's not considered to be a top driver, is all over De Vries and made him look silly. So I'm not surprised with him. And let's be honest, Red Bull aren't going to go, well, we'll give you a season to see how you get on. They're like, no, results now or you go. I would have liked to have seen Lawson in the car, if I'm honest. I would have liked to see them given one of their juniors half a season just to rate him to see. Unless this is the ulterior goal here is Checo's out at the end of the year and they're putting Danny in to go prove to us you've still got it. Let's not beat around the bush. His last 2 seasons with McLaren were dreadful.
Yeah, but we've at least the news that is coming around is that he was in the Red Bull car in Tuesday, and what we've been hearing is that his lap times were actually good for a solid P2 at least, very close to Verstappen. In quali simulations and in race simulations, it looks like it would have been the perfect wingman. Unlike what we had with Mr. Sergio Perez, not going too far ahead in the podcast, but yeah, it's not a big. It's not a tall order to do better than Sergio is doing right now. Not saying that he is not capable of any better, but probably even a out of shape, let's call it. Daniel Ricciardo seems to be able to at least show more promise than what Checo has been doing.
Yeah, realistically, in that car, you should be comfortably in top 4 every weekend, even when you're having a bad weekend.
Yeah. So I do think that's what's happening now. They're probably grooming him to be in that car for next year. I've listened to the Sky Sports F1 podcast that came out on Tuesday. They actually had to re-record the beginning of the podcast because the news of Daniel's return to F1 came out during lunchtime. And Seth Kravitz actually said that in the Australian GP Saturday, what's it called that it does? It's the notebook or...
Yeah, Ted's notebook.
Ted's notebook. That while he was recording it, he passed by Daniel Rick, and he actually said that it was good for a season off, and then he would be that he was pretty confident that he would be back in 2024 in the colors that he was wearing, which were Red Bull colors. So
we've all said it is. No one saw a reason for him to go there as third driver, unless he was being guaranteed a seat the following year. There would be no point to go there just as the third driver.
yeah, and let's
You know,
be honest, the only thing that he has to do this season is basically score some points and try to prevent that AlphaTauri ends up last in the championship like it is right now.
The first thing he's got to do is beat Yuki.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, he might be on Max's pace or close to Max in a Red Bull. The AlphaTauri is not a Red Bull. And let's put pressure on top of that, because he now knows what we're 10 races in. So he's got 13 races to prove himself. That's pressure when you got Dr. Marco stood there going, come on. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, 11 races in. So this was the 11th race, not counting, of course, Imola, because we didn't have actually a race in Imola. So it's 11 races. So yeah, the obvious next question would be, how do you think he will go? But I think it's one of those cases that until we see how comfortable he is on a car that isn't a McLaren, will we be able to say anything? Because I don't really think that we have any data to make any.
No, we can't. We'll find out. Even tomorrow's testing, you won't find out anything because they're all running different programs and different things. You'll get an idea, because let's be honest, Max at the minute is going out first lap and putting in a solid time. So that'll be the reference point, and let him go out in the Alpha Tauri and see how he stacks up against Yuki, and it'll be the race. Let him get qualifying, see it, and then go, right, one weekend, you've now learned the car. It's been a week, a race weekend. You know the car, so next race, you've got to be on it. You know, that's your test. Essentially, you'll get to bed yourself in.
Yeah, the thing that I find most interesting about all of this is actually that they did the announcement in the middle of the day, so right after he came off the car. So there at least must have been some confidence that he will be able to do at least as good a job as Nick that car. So
I don't know. The only footage I've seen of it was him spinning at Luffield.
yeah, he has lap time, so he must have not spun every lap that it did.
No, it's going to be interesting. Let's see. I mean, it's good to have him back a character, but yeah, time will
and
tell.
it does go well with Yuki. I've seen some footage of them in promotion days, so at least that will be funny.
Yeah, I think it'd be, like I say, it's going to be how he stacks up with a car that isn't good. Let's be honest.
Let's see. So yeah, that Danny Rick back on the grid. Nick De Vries out.
He's not in IndyCar.
Not in IndyCar. Let's be honest. He said that it doesn't have any interest of going to IndyCar. So yeah, let's see. Never say no. We've heard some Formula One drivers, ex-Formula One drivers, saying that they would only go to IndyCar to do road and street tracks, and then they are winning oval races. So yeah,
Exactly.
the racing always pulls you in. So yeah, let's see how it goes. So British Grand Prix Silverstone, you were there. How was the ambience of it all?
It was normal. I say normal Grand Prix. We came busy. A lot of orange and yellow in terms of hats in the grandstands and shirts being worn. So there was, which is interesting because you're so used to seeing, say, black and silver, and then the bright yellow of Mercedes for the Hamilton stuff. But there was a noticeable shift in a lot of McLaren gear, and especially Lando. There was an awful lot of Lando support.
I mean, I do think I am of the opinion that Formula One in the actual coverage does overlay some shearing like WWE does, because it sounds fake to my ears, to my musician ears. It sounds like WWE does it. It might just be that they choose a particular grandstand and put a mic there, and they just go up on the volume
Yeah,
and they do it.
the
But
cheering,
it did
the cheering was
sound.
there. I mean, okay, so we were in the clubhouse for qualifying, and when Lando took pole, I mean, we'll skip that bit. When he took pole almost briefly, it was a noticeable cheer throughout the circuit. So I don't think it was faked.
Am I right in saying that he actually was P1 in both Q1 and Q2? I do think he was.
Yeah, he was Q2, and then for
Yeah, he
about
was.
2
Oh no,
corners.
no! In Q2, Max was faster than him. So
Yeah, Max
yeah,
just got his runs right, didn't he?
it was not that big of a difference in Q3. I
Well,
must say, it was 2/10. So the McLaren does turn on the tires pretty nicely. Um, let's skip ahead a little bit. We've been doing this for this entire season. So I although I was shouting at the TV because I I must admit I get a little bit annoyed when other podcasts just go full on Ham Fozzy or Verstappen Fozzy or whatever, but I am Lando Fozzy, to be honest. And yeah, I was screaming at the TV when they put on the hard tires on the last safety car, on the only safety car. It was a VSC. We had a VSC and then a
it
safety
was
car.
VSC.
And then
Yeah,
safety. But they do turn those tires on pretty quickly.
yeah, they get tire temping, and I think it was. I can only think their strategist must have been thinking we've got new hards versus used softs, and we won't be able to keep Hamilton behind us on the softs because we'll kill the tires too quickly. I think that was the thought of if he gets ahead of us, I don't think we have the pace to pass him. But if we can hold him off for a couple of laps, get the tyres turned on, we'll have the grip advantage throughout. And it proved right. But I mean, it was a couple of stonking laps from Lando to keep him behind and get out of DRS range.
Yeah, and let's not forget that it was one of the first times that he was actually on track against a world champion or a top team driver, when he actually had a chance of keeping that position and not just delaying what was obviously going to happen, because those McLarens were mighty fast.
Their upgrade has been whatever they're doing, they've got to keep doing it because they're flying.
Yeah, I don't think that the front wing upgrade must have done much, because Lando had a new front wing and Piastri didn't have it, and they were pretty close on pace all weekend.
Yeah.
Piastri, let's just for Piastri as well. It was just that safety car that ruined this.
Which
finishing
is
position.
it's how it rolls, isn't it? It works for you sometimes and it doesn't other times.
Yeah,
But yeah, he had a solid
yeah.
weekend considering.
Yeah, it was a bit, but let's not forget he's a rookie. He was a bit, let's say, not lost, but unsure about his tire preservation during the race, much more than Lando. Lando was much more confident on how the tires were holding up. And about that, let's just say that the tires, I do think that they would be able to do a full Grand Prix distance on those medium tires if they were allowed to.
Yeah.
Because they looked brand spanking new at lap 40 or whatever it was when they eventually pitted. So this mixture, I would have liked to have seen a softer mixture of tires, although just after saying that, I do think that it helped McLaren, so maybe not.
Yeah.
So yeah, so a very good weekend for McLaren. They had the Austria updates, a few more we don't really know. You can actually see if you look at close up images of the back end of the car, you can see the diffuser and how it comes out, and the, what do they call it, because it's not these new rear wings are weird, but that last wing um element on the bottom when it joins the bodywork of the car,
Yeah.
that one is different, a lot different, and that works the airflow coming out of the diffuser. So that's working, safe to say.
Yeah, they've definitely got for
B-spec
Silverstone
car.
anyway. They've got the car going. Let's not forget the lower temperatures definitely helped them with the tyre turn. I think the higher temps haven't helped them in the past, so we'll see how this new car turns around on higher temps.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it's not a similar track per se to Austria. It's longer and it's
Faster,
a bit
a lot
faster,
faster corners.
but the it's high speed corners, medium to high speed corners as well. So it's two tracks with high to medium, with a lot of high to medium speed corners. So that might have helped them a little bit. So Hungary is going to be a very nice place to see if they are like just where, let's say, Aston was this weekend, which was on pace
Nowhere.
behind. It's not that they were, nowhere. They were
No, just
pace wise, they were
what
behind
we
Ferrari
expecting.
and higher than Alpine and the other teams, let's say. And Williams had a good weekend as well.
Yeah, let's hope they found something and it
It's not
wasn't
just
just a one
Albon.
fluke.
I mean, Sargent was
Was
nice.
there.
Sargent was there. It was very close to the Ferraris, and Albon was mega keeping those Ferraris on his tail in the end of the race.
Maybe, excuse me. Maybe James Voles is now showing his turning up there. Is his influence finally coming to fruition?
Let's talk about other podcasts again. The Slash Race podcast before the British Grand Prix, they actually went to Alpine because they had a new car launch. We talked about this on the Portuguese podcast yesterday. So it turned out to be a automotive industry podcast in the end, just because of Alpine and how moronic their presence in F1 is. So let's not talk about that. But they had a launch of a new car that it's the same as the only car that they sell. Uh, so the Unstored edition. And then he went to Williams, which was the more interesting part of that podcast. And James Walls is actually lobbying for, because there's another budget cap, and that's for uh, factory upgrades, so machining upgrades and all that. And that's $35 million per year, if I'm not mistaken. And he says that Williams is actually like almost like 120
Still in the
million.
90s.
Yeah, still in the 90s. So 120 million they would have to spend to be at least on par with, let's say, a Red Bull or a Mercedes right now. So with the budget cap, with the facilities development budget cap, I don't know if that's the name of that particular
Sounds
budget
good.
cap. Sounds good for a non-English speaking guy.
That's what we'll call it.
It being $35 million, it's, I don't know, this rule doesn't make any sense for me, because if you want to bring teams closer to each other, not allowing smaller teams to develop their facilities seems a bit counterproductive.
Yeah, but I suppose it's the fair share thing. They can't let one team improve their facilities and not another team.
Yeah, but the problem with that is, I'm not saying, I'm just saying increase that budget cap for everyone. Because the teams that have more machinery don't have as much of a headroom for improvement as the lower.
They should just tier it so the top two in the championship are capped at 30, or the top half of the championship are 35, and then it goes up to 40, or down to last place who get
exactly like Wind Tunnel time and CFD time. That
everything else is done.
Mega. And talking about that some stuff started to make sense to me on how the upgrades in some teams of the through the field have been working. So it starts to make sense that McLaren has a few upgrades that are, I think they have a simulator and wind tunnel upgrade that are delayed. I think Alpine has a simulator delayed as well. So I start to wonder if that's just because they are trying to keep it under that budget cap thing. So it starts to make sense, and how. So yeah, and it's not something that adds anything to the on track stuff, because we don't really like to talk about budget caps and stuff. We like to talk about racing, and we want to see racing. So yeah, and that idea that you just have thrown out, I think it would be very good for that to be structured like that. So back of the grid teams can spend more money on their facilities, and the people that are investing on the teams would actually be probably more likely to put more money in if it goes to facilities than just to build a car, because facilities increase the value of a team. So that's actually bring more money into the sport, and that's good every time you bring more money to smaller teams, unless it's
100%.
rich energy. And that's, we probably demonetize then too. So let's keep going. Nobody heard that. So let's. Should we talk about Sergio Perez or about his weekend, or can we just?
What is there to say?
It's the same thing as last week, basically. Nowhere in the qualifying and nowhere in the race. He was. very
Yeah, I
slow
did
going.
read somewhere that someone suggested he was deliberately qualifying badly so that he could drive through the field because he knows he's got a good car to make himself look better. So no, he
They
should be
did-
sticking that thing on the front row, front second row every week, and following Max in. And if there's a problem or safety car at the right time, it might be fortunate and give him the odd win, like he was doing at the start of the season. And then he got all cocky and all mouthy, going, "Yeah, I'm going to win the championship. I've got this on you." And all of a sudden, Max went, "No, you haven't." And he,
Goodbye.
and I don't think he's. I don't think his head can handle it. I think his head's gone, and he's just like, "Ugh."
Yeah, that makes no sense just because he's nowhere and he's not looking good on the races, so makes
Yeah.
no sense at all.
Nah, it's just people trying to justify it as always. It's because they don't want to say he's just shit at the moment.
But he is
So
shit.
it's easier to come up with an excuse because we're in a modern woke culture where you're not allowed to say what you actually think for fear.
Yeah, we fear no one.
Fear
Sergio Perez
nothing.
is being shit for 5 races, so
Mm.
um let's keep going. I'm tired of talking about Perez. Let's talk about Mercedes actually. I think there are two teams that had the exact opposite on the weekend, which was Mercedes and Ferrari. Ferrari actually qualified pretty well, and then were not nowhere during the race. The safety car really ruined their race. I think they were
Yeah,
the team that were the most affected by the safety car. Um,
yeah, and then I don't know what happened with Sainz towards the end, but he just nowhere, no pace, nothing, and
as soon as someone attacked him and he went offline, uh, his tires were
game over.
completely game over. But then uh, he was able to, once he had no one around him to screw his lines and all that, he was able to actually go and follow Leclerc. So might have just been like tire life and him racing hard but trying not to ruin his tires because he didn't have new tires for that last
No,
stint um, of the race. It might have been just that. So Ferrari actually qualified pretty well. It was fifth and sixth, no fourth and fifth because Sergio Perez was nowhere to be seen. So I keep forgetting Sergio. Okay, so fourth and fifth. Uh, and then in the race, I mean, safety car ruined the race. And Mercedes was nowhere during the qualifying, but then they were actually able to take care of those tires pretty well and put themselves in the race.
yeah, I think they've found something in the car, and from all the reports from Hamilton, they sort of know what they need to do to get the back end sorted that they need, and then they'll be competitive. Maybe not with Red Bull, but they'll be competitive or more competitive than they are. But when you consider that Hamilton was off on the first lap, and they had to, yeah, they had luck with the safety car, but it is what it is.
With one
But no, I
car,
think they
with
just,
Hamilton, with Russell, they had
yeah,
fitted
he
for
got
the
nailed.
safety car.
But yeah, I think they had a good. I don't think they would have expected to be on the podium. So
Yeah, I really don't think. And from those two Mercedes drivers, I think Russell was doing the amazing race because he was actually on those soft tires for what 37 laps or something like that.
mm,
So more than half the race in those tires and able to be just behind. Was it Leclerc or Sainz? Leclerc, Sainz.
he was
I don't
Leclerc,
remember. It was Leclerc.
a Ferrari.
Yeah, it was a Ferrari, and being able to sometimes put the car in and follow him and not destroy his soft tires, which were not new in the beginning of the race. So yeah, that was a nice sign, at least in this track. Of
Well, it sort
that,
of bodes well that we're hopefully going to get a bit more competition behind Max, with potentially Mercedes, McLaren, and Ferrari and Aston potentially all being in the mix. Because we're assuming they've just had a off weekend, pressure of it being Silverstone and home race.
2 off weekends in like we said, similar kind of corner tracks. So it might just be that these kinds of tracks don't really mix well with that car.
But then Hungary, that was one of the ones that didn't Alonso think he could win at, Monaco and Hungary.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting to see where they tip up on the weekend.
Yeah. And that's one of the races that I still that I want to go live somewhere in the future.
Oh,
So
what,
yeah,
Hungary?
yeah. Budapest is the most amazing city I've ever had the pleasure to go, and I've only been there for hours in one day and hours in another day. Just on the road with the band, shit,
That's
sleeping on the
a whole
floor.
story.
Yeah, sleeping on the floor, drunk. Yeah, but I saw the sign saying, um, to the sign where we saw that if I
Hungary.
had, yeah, Hungaroring. I don't actually remember what it said, but I remember seeing that it was the way to the track. But yeah, then I was just passing through and I had just lost the entire engine protection below the van that we were in just because we actually gone through a delaminated tire on the highway. So it was a bit of a
Nice.
stressful time where the police actually had my driver's license in their hands, and I actually thought, yeah, I'm not going to leave this place without my driver's license, but all good, all good. So I was a bit stressed, let's say. But yeah, it was more than 10 years ago. Getting old. So yeah, from the top 10, I think we talked about everyone. We talked about Red Bull, we talked about McLaren, Mercedes, Aston, and Williams. Williams have had a good weekend, and teams that actually were nowhere were Haas and Alpine. Let's just talk about that incident with or the two incidents between Lance Stroll and Pierre Gasly. The first one being that overtake from Lance to on Gasly. How did you see that? Because Gasly
At
was,
Stoke on,
yeah,
yeah, he went off the track. Or
but
Stroll did.
Stroll did. But did he leave space on the outside?
Yeah, he was. He put himself in a position. There's no way he was going to stay within track limits. That's for sure. The way that corner is and the speed he was doing, he was.
That's not my question, because my question is, and I'm going to sound like a Stroll apologist right now, but
Did Gasly run him out?
yeah, even if, and I'm not saying that Lance would be able to stay within the track limits on that corner if Gasly was not there at that speed. But I don't actually think that we got the opportunity to check if he would have been able to, because Gasly actually went to the white line and put his left tire on the white line. So yeah, I do understand what Gasly says, but I don't think that you got much of a let's say, reason to complain when he didn't actually leave the space. He didn't leave the space, really.
But again, it comes down to the speed of the corner. Once you've turned into there and you're stuck on a trajectory and you can't hit the brakes in the middle of that corner. Stroll was just in real time watching it. I went, "Oh, he's got to give that back." That was my gut because there's opportunistic and there's that's you're never going to get away with that because there's no way you're going to do it without, because it's Pierre's corner. You're going the long way around the outside, and the only reason he's done that is he knows he can run wide. If there's a gravel trap there, there's no way he would have been there.
Yeah, but there was no gravel trap.
I know there wasn't, but still.
Every driver does that when there's no gravel trap. They try, and if they are made to give the place back, they give the place back.
And that's why I think it was fair. He should have given the place back, and that's what I went with.
Oh, we have a different opinion. Ooh. Fight. So yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised if they told him to give a place back. I would have understood, but I do think that for a driver to say that that the other one should have given place back, at least he should have left the space on the outside. But that's just my opinion, and I'm the opinion of let them race, so it's one of those like really minor instances. And not minor was the second one. That Stroll actually got a penalty. And to show that I'm not a Stroll apologist, I actually think that the penalty was too light. Which was in the corner after that. I don't know what's the names of the corners.
Club.
Yeah, it's Club. I actually knew that one. Okay, so I knew that one, Club. So, Gasly went on the inside to try and overtake, and Stroll then went off track, and then the next corner is to the right and not to the left. And he just tapped him, and I was actually surprised how easily that Alpine just broke. It looked like a small bump, but yeah.
It's the usual thing where you just get it in the right angle, everything right but wrong, and it snaps like a twig.
Yeah, and we know that Aston is indestructible, so
it's been built for Stroll, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. For Stroll and for Alonso to just bump into the walls at Canada. So, yeah. I do think that we talked about everything. Nick DeVries was nowhere. Has engine exploded, and Alfa Romeo was nowhere.
Yeah, apart from the first few laps with Lando leading and the normal jostle, and then Verstappen going once Max got in, which we knew was coming. I don't think anyone expected McLaren to hold him off. And then it just became a case of like, how long can Lando hang on to him, and how big a gap can he pull for behind him? Oh, safety car. Didn't really make much of it. The first one, the VSC, was it?
Yeah.
That's when Russell changed first, didn't he?
Yeah.
So that it didn't really shake up too much. And then when it went full safety car, and we had the McLaren, oh no, they've put hards on. Between there and then, it was a very boring. Not to be a downbeat on Formula One, but once you get through the initial phase and they settle down, these cars that are supposedly promote more overtaking, there's too much tire. I've said it before. There's too much tire conservation. There's too much engine conservation and fuel saving. That you have 5-10 laps of hard racing at the start, 40 laps of them driving to a delta, and no one's racing because everyone's doing the same thing, and then they go, right, you've got enough fuel to go 10 laps at the end and then push.
Yeah, the only thing there is that it was a good start of the race, and I'm not judging too harshly this race because it was kind of developing, at least in the fight for not the podium, but for fourth, fifth, and sixth.
Yeah.
That Ferrari and Mercedes fight was actually shaping up to be something quite interesting, let's say.
Yeah.
So we didn't actually get to see that. We got an exciting last part of the Grand Prix, apart from the last like 1 or 2 laps. Then when Norris was able to get away. So, and I think we had got another like 1 or 2 laps, maybe Piastri would be able to at least try and overtake Hamilton. It was just 1 second behind Hamilton on the standings. So yeah, we almost got.
I think
finish.
if we'd said on the previous podcast that we'd have had 2 McLarens in the top 4 and the rate and McLaren leading on pace, you would have gone, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think it bodes well for the next coming race before the summer break, just to see what else. And also Lando, it's going to do Lando and Piastri no end of good because they're going to be on such a confidence high. And as we've seen with Max, and we all know, confidence breeds results.
Yeah. For Hungary, I'm not really hopeful for McLaren, but at least for Spa, that car might work quite well there.
Yeah.
Rocket ship, like Lewis called the car. Called the McLaren. And so, yeah, I think we have 2 nice races to look forward to until the end of the month, because next race is actually the race in Hungaroring in 2 weeks' time, and then the week after that is the Belgian Grand Prix, and then we have the small summer break. So we have the Dutch Grand Prix. So yeah, the next 3 races are 4 races, because then we have Monza. Monza is always good because I don't think
just
that teams
so fast.
Yeah, it's so fast, and teams don't do as much as a Monza package as they used to in the past. So it always gets a little bit mixed up at that Grand Prix. With the budget cap, it makes no sense to do just a car just for Monza, like in the old days that you you arrived to Monza, it was a different car almost. So yeah. So it was a nice. I enjoyed the race. I didn't fall asleep like in Spain. So
I don't know. There were people sleeping at Silverstone.
Oh, I saw that. It was in college, and he was an old man. I have no clue who he is. And nobody is going to know who it is because Earl is never going to make that picture public.
Oh no, I don't think it was anyone. He wasn't anyone famous, but yeah, still. Yeah.
Anyway. I was more irritated than you because I never went to an F1 race. So if I was there, I would be wide awake for sure. I will never. Could be the most boring race ever, but I would be very, very awake. So yeah, that was the British Grand Prix weekend. It was actually a small podcast, but it's the best we can do with the tiredness and the rest that we've had. So yeah, we're never going to be monetized. Sorry, Rui. As much good behavior that we have on the Portuguese podcast. Yeah, the
Yeah, but we
English
don't
one.
do it. We don't do it to earn money, do we?
Oh, we're going to be fired from Draft and Pray podcast. Uh, so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Next race is in 2 weeks in Hungary, and we'll be back for that time. If you have nothing more to say, just follow us at Mom Draft Pray at every social media app that we don't actually check, and that email that I haven't gone there in a couple of months. So yeah, Sander and Rui will actually check those things and tell me to answer some questions. So send those. So see you next time. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bump Draft and Pray is an independent podcast, and the music was by Letting Punks Know.